Using as a jump off point my stream mission verse. If you hit exclamation point mission verse, you're gonna get the verse that we're gonna kind of end up on, and it's going to be the reason is clear. If you ever saw my original vision video from like March last year before, like it's a long time ago, you'll know why this verse is kind of a big deal. But I'm just going to spend a little bit of time kind of going through it together and talking about the what's happening, and then kind of let it fall into the things that are happening in my life, and we'll see how it goes, because it's not really prepped, but at the same time, it's something that I feel like that I want to kind of talk to you guys about. And so let's do a little context first. And what you'll see is that Jesus is sitting at a table, right? He is. He's sitting at a table with a bunch of people, like he's like legit at the house of the ruler of the Pharisees. They're they're watching him carefully, so he's there, and he's been invited to this party. Imagine being invited to a party, and everyone around you, you're like, I wonder if they're out to get me. You're like, are they, like this person hates my guts. They're gonna kill me later. This person, it'd be like sitting with the Godfather, and all of his cronies, and you're like, I don't know what's gonna happen here. So he's sitting there, and he's having a meal with them, and he heals somebody on the Sabbath, and it kind of freaks him out, and people get, they're all whispering to each other, and they're even more upset. And then he tells a parable, talking to them kind of about their own arrogance. He basically calls them prideful, arrogant people who don't have a heart for the lost. Then he gets into what's called the parable of the great banquet. So he goes from basically sitting at a meal, and then giving an illustration about coming to a meal, and then an illustration about the people at the meal. So this is how it goes. So he said to the man who invited him, when you give a dinner or banquet, right? This is the great banquet. This is the when you give a feast, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, right? That's who you want to bless people with, what you have. And somebody responds by saying, blessed is everyone who will eat bread in the kingdom of God. Essentially saying, blessed are the people who are going to be saved. Blessed are the people who are invited to this banquet. So remember, if you keep in mind the context, and I didn't cover it that much, you've got Jesus surrounded by all the Pharisees, all the most important people in town, bunch of hypocrites and power players who are all faking it, bunch of whitewashed tombs, and he's there talking about how when they showed up, they were, arrogant. They were jostling for position to see who would be more important, and they only invited like the important people. And Jesus is like, you know what, guys? The poor, the lame, the lost, the people that you're supposed to be serving and taking care of, you're not. And then one of them shouts out, boy, it's going to be great when we're all eating in heaven with God. It's going to be wonderful when we're all together. And Jesus goes, essentially, the people who you think are going to be part of that meal aren't the people who you think are going to be part of that meal. So you're right. Yes, it will be a blessing, but I need to tell you a story. And he goes into this parable. We're going to read it together. And it says this, but he said to them, a man once gave a great banquet and invited many. That's God, and he's talking about end of time stuff, okay? So, and at the time of the banquet, he sent his servant to say to those who had been invited, come, for everything now is ready. So you've got the setup. He's made the big, he's got the ballroom set together, all the food's ready, everything's put together. It's set up for the people that he chose to invite, that he sent the invitations to. So in context, this is, God speaking to Israel, God speaking to the prophets, God speaking to his people and saying, I want to be in you're my people, I am your God, let's, come be with me. And you see what happens next is that they all began to make excuses. First, someone says to him, I bought a field and I must go out to see it. Please have me excused. Right? I got business to do. Verse 19. And another said, I bought 5 yoke of oxen. I have to go examine them. Please have me excused. I've got important things to do. I've got business stuff. Another said, I've married a wife and therefore I cannot come. And I got personal stuff. You got business stuff and you got money stuff and you got personal stuff. And the servant came and reported these things to his master. Then the master became angry and said to the servant, go out quickly. Okay, so we're going to pause there. You guys know that I'm a pastor. You guys know that I've been in institutionalized church for a really long time. And part of that is being able to observe a lot over a long period of time. I was part of the church when I was 6 years old. My dad got saved when I was 6. I was part of a Baptist church and part of a good congregation for a long time. I went to Bible college and I went to seminary. I've been working in big churches. I've served in churches of 1,500 people. I've served in churches of 40 people. I've served in churches that were multi-ethnic church plants, and I've served in churches that have been in only one community for 200 years. I've been all over the map. And so I've seen a lot. I've had a lot of experiences with the church. And so when I read this parable, not only do I see the Jesus and his illustration with, he's talking to the children of Israel who have rejected God, or talking to the Pharisees who are sitting there looking at God in the face and being like, I don't know if I really want to do things your way. I also see the church. Now, I love the church. I think the church is important. I think anybody who slags the church should be very careful, because God loves his people. God loves the church. As messed up and as difficult and as backward and as stupid as some of them can be, God loves his people. So for us to slam them, us to slag them, us to be rude about them, we got to be real careful about that, because it's ungodly. We're to love our brothers and sisters. But I also think we have a place for criticism, for observation, and for recognizing that some churches, some people, some Christians really aren't. And I think what you see here in this first section are people who are talking about how they want to be at the banquet. They accept the invitation. They say they're going to come. The servant goes out to go get them, as in, it's time to put your money where your mouth is. It's time for you to stop the thing you're doing, the thing you want to do, this thing that's important to you, to pivot and to come to the thing that God is inviting you to, right? So you've got, here's your way of doing things. Here's your priorities, your interests. God goes, actually, no, come to me. Let me feed you. Let me take care of you. The thing you're doing, make it less important than being with me. There are a lot of people in the church and a lot of people in life, a lot of people that are Christians who do this. God invites them to a new thing, invites them to come to be a disciple, invites them to come to be someone who goes to the next level, to go on mission with him, to remove sin from their life, to engage in ministry, or engage in discipleship, or seek a relationship, or whatever God calls them to. And in that, they call themselves a Christian. They call themselves friends of this guy who they accepted the invitation to. They call themselves a believer. But when the rubber meets the road, the excuses come in, right? If I go do that ministry, if I go whatever, money is going to be a problem. If I go and I talk to that person, or if I build a relationship with that person, it's risky. They're a dangerous person. If I go into to serve the poor, serve the lost, serve the lame, there's a danger that I could get sick, and therefore I'm not sure if God wants that for me. I don't want to get sick, like whatever it is. All of a sudden the excuses come forward, and you get these people that cloister themselves in. I've been part of a lot of churches, and some of them they existed purely for themselves. They wanted to do was to serve the people that were there. In fact, it was so obvious that they only wanted to serve the people that were there, that when new people would come, they actively worked against them. My first church was a church of 75-year-old immigrants who had planted a church a bajillion years ago in their own language. And after years and years and years and years, that ethnicity was no longer showing up in droves to come to their church. Their children at some point had gone and learned the English language. They went to English schools. They said to the church, could we please minister to the people who are that we go to school for? Can we have a youth group that's in English? Can we do worship that's in English? Can we talk to them, bring them to the church in such a way that they understand it? And the older people said, no, this is our church. This is our language. This is our culture. No. Eventually, after so many years, those children left the church. They all just kind of left. They took their grandkids, and they either didn't come to church anymore, or they just went to a different place. And suddenly, after 25 more years, these older people look around and they realize there are no kids, there are no even young adults, there are no families, there is no one that wants to serve, there's nobody that wants to be a deacon or even teach. They're tired, they're old, they don't want to be there, and so they panic. They look at the pastor and they say, "Pastor, we just realized that after telling everybody to get lost and cloistering ourselves in, there's nobody here." And the pastor goes, "Yeah, I know. I'm not really the guy for that." He quits. He's just like, I'm not, and I don't want to do any ministry. I'm good. And so he retires. Then they call me. They did a year and a half of figuring out, what's wrong with us and what ways do we need to grow and what's our big issues. And they call me in, and I come into the church, and they want me to, like, rebuild and engage with the community. And I'm good at playing music, and I'm good at speaking, and I'm good at counseling, and I'm good at outreach and all the things that they want to do. And so I come in there and I start to do that. So I'm meeting people in coffee shops, and I'm hanging out with people. I'm doing marriage counseling for people that can't get it anywhere else. And I'm doing all kinds of stuff in the community, and they start to build. The church comes together, and these people come, the new people start coming. And as much as the older folks had said they want to grow, what they really wanted was someone to come in, do the work, and pay their bills, so they could just sit and watch. Well, that as that was happening, the people that were new, because they were starting to serve and whatnot, they had some ideas. They wanted to do ministry in a different way. They wanted to serve different people, and the older crowd didn't like that. So they started to sabotage the newer group. They went so far as to actually choose to ignore them, to pull back, and when service was over, they wouldn't speak in English to the new people. They only spoke their native language to each other, making sure that the new people knew they weren't welcome anymore. I look at this illustration, or this parable, and I see in it a lot of churches, a lot of Christians, a lot of people who, when they came to Christ, they were thankful. They were thankful for the invitation. They were thankful to be brought into the family. They were thankful for salvation. But when the rubber was to meet the road, they were to do ministry. They were to engage with people. They were to serve. They were to come under what God wanted, leave their priorities and start doing God's priorities. Didn't want to. They simply didn't want to. And so they did what these people do. They started to make excuses. I can't do that. I'm too old. We don't have the money. I don't know how to do it. We don't know whatever. And they decided they weren't going to follow God. So they don't get to come to the blessing. Well, what does this guy do? He says, so the servant came and reported these things to his master. Then the master of the house became angry, and he said to his servants, go quickly to the streets and the lanes of the city, and bring in the poor and the crippled and the blind and the lame. So God, in the illustration, in this parable, this is when God opens up the salvation to the Gentiles. This is where God opens up salvation to the entire world. He says, go everywhere. Go to the streets, the lanes of the city. Go to the places that aren't they're not the rich people, they're not the clean people, they're not the chosen people, they're whatever. Just go to the streets. Go and find people who need help, who can't get there themselves. Blind people can't lead themselves. Crippled people can't walk there themselves. Poor people, aren't dressed properly for it. Lame people can't walk there. Go there, bring them to me, bring them in so that they can be part of this party, part of this this group. I think in the same way, when we look at the Christian church in the modern era, this is where you have the resurgence of missional thinking, of missional churches, of ones that are doing social justice type things. And you've got ones that are like, okay, you know what? Because we are reactionary against these dead, dying, frozen, the frozen chosen, they go the other way, and they start serving like crazy out there. They go out into the world. They missionaries, and they're planting fields, and they're making water wells, and they're helping in everything they can, bringing hospitals and bringing the mission boat of doctors to help people, and they're out there serving. And that was the way that ministry went for a really long time. You had missionaries who would go out, and instead of just standing there preaching the gospel, they would go out with a mission. They would go out and they would serve. They would go out and they'd be like, okay, you guys don't have crops. Let me bring irrigation. Let me bring some money. Let me bring some tractors. Let me do some stuff for you guys. And that would be the way that they would get inroads into the community. And it was awesome. The world was open, and that ministry happened. In the individual churches, this happens too. You'll have people that will look around and be like, I don't want to leave the church, but I do think we should be serving. And so they start serving. And what ends up happening is they either change the environment that they're in and people see that God is working there, or the environment kicks them out and says, listen, you're bringing in people that are poor and they don't smell right. You're bringing in people that are crippled, that are hurt, you got kids that have, mental illnesses. You've got divorced people. You got people that, smoke or drink. You got people that they don't dress right. And so therefore the group gets offended and upset and pushes those people away. In this scenario, you have these people that are coming to God and they are compelled, they're brought in to God because they couldn't go there, and they did it through the act of mercy. Now, this is, I think, the second wave of missionary thinking. And you've got these amazing people that have gone out. We have stories of them all over the place. You've got stories like Hudson Taylor. You've got, I can't remember the name of those people with the airplane that go in, to the lost, that tribe who had never been seen before, and they killed the fathers. I can't remember the name of those people. But, you've got these amazing hero stories of missions that we're trying to go and help. But then what happens, right? You look at verse 22, and it says, and the servant said, Sir, what you've commanded had been done, and there's still room. And the master said to the servant, Go out to the highways and hedges and compel people to come in, that my house may be filled. This is a different mission. This is third wave missionary. This isn't simply go to the people who need it and bring them. This is go do something that no one else would do. Go to the weirdest places. It says go to the highways and the hedges, right? Go to places that are outside of town. Go across the world. Go walk into places that no one else has gone. Bring them from far away. Go to the hedges. Go to the places where people are hiding. Go dig around and see if you can find more people. Drag them in. Compel people. It means to pull, to grab, to bring them in, but it also means to entice. It means to make it so exciting or so interesting or so meaningful or something to them that they can't help but want to come. Go out into the world and tell them how great this banquet's going to be. Go tell people who no one ever talks to, who are hiding in the corners, who can't be seen, who are far away, and go tell them how great it would be to be at my banquet so that my house may be full. I think this is what we're doing here. I think that's what we're doing with online missions. It is that we who have been called to it are told to go far and wide, the global reach of the internet, into the hedges, or in other words, into places nobody else can get, into places nobody else wants to go, into places that, like, we can be invited into people's homes. We can be invited literally into someone's house so that we can have a conversation with them, to a person who's never left the house for a month, to someone who is only always at home, only always stuck there because they have mental illness, because they have depression, because they have learning disability, because they have social disorder, because they have autism, because they have PTSD, because they're sick, they're ill, they're stuck. Whatever the reason is, these people who can't go to church, who won't go to church, who couldn't be found simply because traditional missions can't find them, we, through Twitch, through online ministry, through doing excellent content and putting it together, can actually get into that house. They find us, we find them, we build that relationship. And then as we've gone out to these hedges, as we've gone out to these places, as we've gone out to where no one has gone, they look at us and we begin to tell them how great the banquet is going to be. We go tell them, we compel people to come in and say, listen, I know somebody who is kind, who has love, who is willing to help you, feed you, heal you, care for you. And it's a group of people that when you walk in there, all those stuck-up people that you're avoiding, all the Pharisees and all the people that are like religious people and the ones who are always judging and always hurting, that hurting people, they're not there. When God invited, or when this guy invited people, all those people said, no, you know who's there? The poor, the crippled, the blind, the lame, the lost, the lonely, the disenfranchised, and the people who are like you. That's who's there. Come here. You will get loved, fed, cared for, helped, given hope. We have that opportunity. We have an opportunity like no one else has because we're willing to do what nobody else can do. It is hard to do Twitch ministry. It is hard to do online ministry. You have to be so on for so long and so good at so many different things. It is a very unique individual who knows the scriptures, who has passion for evangelism, who can run electronics, who is interested in nerd stuff, who knows how to set up lighting, who is willing to do the research on sound, who can program the computer properly so that weird things can happen to it so that it engages with the Twitch culture. That's a very, very narrow group of people. But because God is calling more and more and more of those together, you can hear him saying, go to the highways, go to the hedges, compel people to come in. That's what we're doing. My world right now is upside down because of God's call. And I'll tell you a bit of my story. So I grew up in a house, in a normal house, mom, dad, kids. I didn't come from a house of divorce or anything. I love my parents. My parents are great. But when I was a kid, I was bullied like crazy. I was bullied all the way through school, all the way up till grade 12. I moved schools multiple times, but in that town, there's only one high school. So all the bullies all came to one school, and there I was. And I got absolutely pounded for years and years and years, to the point where, like, I tell the story, I use this a lot because it's a good illustration. Essentially, I remember when it became fun for people to see if they could throw rocks and hit me after school. I was, the duck that was going past that they would see if they would hit. I was hurt. I was publicly embarrassed. Like, it was bad. It was hard to be in school. I didn't like school. I was good at school. I was young because I'd skipped grades. I was smart because I just, God is good to me, and I was smart. And so the school was easy, but everything around school was hard. When I finished graduating school, there was only one thing I wanted to do with my life, and that was I wanted to go into computers. I wanted to go and I wanted to hide in the room behind the keyboard and just do computer stuff. And that was back before, Big Bang Theory and all the nerd stuff was kind of cool. That was before people played video games. That was before you had, like the internet doing what it's doing now. And so being a nerd and a Christian and all sorts of, trouble didn't really help, but that's what I wanted to do. I pushed and pushed and pushed to try to get into computers. But when I finally got to the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology for Electrical Engineering and Computer Systems Technology, I hated it. I dropped out because they wanted me to do accounting and they wanted me to do boring stuff with the computer. And I wasn't ready. I was 17 years old. I was far away from home. I was in doing school and I just wasn't ready for it. It fell apart. When I got home, my dad basically said, you know what, if you're going to work at the mill and you're going to make that summer money, well, you need to be registered somewhere. Why don't you register at a Bible college? So I registered it, just the one down, closest one that I'd heard of from a pastor, and I just went there. I took it. And when I walked in there, I was full of rage and anger and sadness and disappointment and so much. I paid extra so that nobody would be in my dorm room. I pushed people away. I asked, I literally, people try to be my friend because they're a bunch of Christian guys who were trying to, connect with me. And I would do my best to offend them, ignore them. No, I wasn't mean. I was still a Christian guy who knew how to play the game, but I would do my best to make sure that they understood I didn't want anything to do with them, but they kept pushing at me. They kept coming into me. They kept trying to compel me to be part of their group. And eventually, as I went to the mandatory Bible studies, as I sat with them in the mandatory group meetings, they showed me more and more love. After a couple months, I finally started to connect to God. I finally started to connect to these people, but I was so filled with fear and rage and hurt that I'd never dealt with, that I didn't know how to deal with. I had this moment where I came to them during one Bible study, and I was red. I was weeping. I was freaking out because I was so angry and I didn't know what to do with it. And because these people were so good, they didn't deserve it. So that meant it wasn't them that was hurting me. It was me that was hurting myself, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And so they came and they held me. They literally held me on the bed because I was shaking violently, weeping, snotting, bleh. And they prayed over me, and they asked God to fix whatever was going on inside there, to show me what was going on inside there, and to help me. From that moment, God got a hold of my heart again, rededicated my life to him, got rid of all the angsty, horrible music I was listening to, put away all the stuff that was kind of leading me into more terrible feelings, and started to engage with the world. Months later, I had a girlfriend. Months, I was part of a band. We were able to do all sorts of fun music. I was going out and being part of the groups, and they weren't horrible, and it was amazing. Then God called me in, and he said, okay, listen, I want you to stay here. And so I just stayed there. I was one of the people who was the poor, the crippled, the blind, the lime. The blind and the lime. Yeah, that's it. The lime, the blind and the lame. That was hard. I was one of those that was so beaten down and trodden and hurt. I had people who came and served me and loved me and brought me and said, you know what, actually the master is not like what you think he is. Actually, the people that are in this party aren't who you think they are. The ones who hurt you and the ones who broke you and the ones you're so mad at weren't part of this. Let me introduce you to the real master of the party. And they did. And it utterly changed my life. God called me into ministry. And for 16 years, I ministered in churches who were dead, dying, and abusive. I was hurt for a decade straight. I had churches that would do things to me that nobody should ever do to anybody. And they brought me to the place twice where I was going to die. My body was giving up. My mind was giving up. I was going to kill myself, and I couldn't function anymore. I was done. The church wrecked me. The leadership of the church wrecked me as the pastor. And God called me into another church finally where I was able to get a little bit of a healing. And then the moment things started to grow. So keep in mind, I do a decade of ministry that I'm getting absolutely destroyed. But God called me to be a preacher. God called me to be a teacher. I keep going. I go to this little church and they're super wonderful for a little while. We double in size. We triple in size. The community is coming. We're doing awesome stuff. Satan looks up around the corner and he goes, what's going on over there? I thought I killed that church. And all of a sudden we're hopping. And that's where the enemy really started to lay in, and more, you get a couple of leaders that were started to do the same stuff as the old group, started to become, resentful, abusive, started to accuse me of stuff, tried to divide the church, and it went back to the way it was. And I started to get super duper hurt, but I stayed with it, right? I stayed with it. I got wrecked by that church. And when I came out the other side about 2 years ago, I didn't know what to do with myself. I honestly didn't. I didn't know what God wanted me to do. I was so hurt and so tenderized and so wrecked and so sad and so miserable that I said, God, do you still want me to be a pastor? Do you still want me to be a preacher? Do you still want me to be a teacher? I'm so messed up right now. And I don't know what to do. I'll sign up for another 10 years of getting crapped on if you want me to. I will walk right back into the boxing ring if that's what you want me to do. But I don't know what you want me to do. Lead me, guide me, tell me, show me. And God, through miracles, called me into this ministry, into Twitch ministry. He said, in very real sense, I'm going to give you somewhere to stay where you feel safe, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to love people who are like you, really hurt, really afraid, ones who, when they go to the grocery store, they have a panic attack and they don't know why, ones who have been hurt by so many people that they're literally scared. ones who have gone to the church and have wanted to be part of the church, but were beaten up and hurt by it and never want to walk back in. People who are like you, except for I'm going to use you to serve them. I'm going to make you one of the ones who goes to the highways and goes to the hedges to compel people, to tell people, listen, the experience that you had with the church, the experience you had with the people, the experience you had in life isn't representation of the people who are at the party, who are part of God's people. They're not like that. You can be that healing balm, that bridge to people to share your love with them. And it has been the greatest experience of ministry that I can think of. I've enjoyed this 1,000 times over. It's come at a cost. It's come at a cost. My family, over the last few years here, as the church was growing and then getting hurt, as I moved into this kind of ministry, as God was calling me and training me, Satan opened up the doors to try to absolutely destroy me. He worked through my son, and he caused him to make terrible, terrible choices, become angry and abusive and lost and hurt until he left. And after months of pounding on me and months of screaming and accusations and calling the police and having me put under investigation for things that I never did, after that he left, and he moved away, and then he died of a fentanyl overdose in January. We got the news that he fell so far and got so hurt and so down and had such a loss that he died. It killed him. And during that time, I have another person in my life who's very close to me, who has been absolutely pounded with mental illness, with addiction issues, with physical pains that come out of absolutely nowhere. I've had friends who have looked at me and have seen all the things I've gone through and have looked and have said, you know what, I can't be your friend anymore because it hurts too much. Watching what you go through for the sake of ministry, for the sake of serving, for the sake of following God is too hard to watch. I can't do it anymore. It has been the greatest experience to be part of your life, to be part of this ministry, to be part of what it is to get into the highways and hedges. But the cost of ministry has been incredible. I believe with all my heart that the reason I get pounded so much, my family gets hurt so much, is because I'm just seeking to follow God and I'm not going to quit. That as I just simply say yes, everything in the world is trying to make me say no and quit. And I've wanted to, believe me. But I think of the words of Peter, when Jesus says, "Are you going to leave too?" And Peter goes, "Where am I supposed to go? You have the words of life." I say the same thing. Where am I supposed to go? If I'm not in your will and I'm not doing what you called, there's no better place than this. I've served alone. I've served under attack. And now I'm surrounded by people who are loving and kind, ones who check in on me. The Discord, the community, the Stream Dream Team, constantly showing me love. The people on stream constantly showing me love. The people I get to connect to when I'm on their stream, excited to see me. My name comes into chat and they're like, "I love you. That's so awesome to see you. That's so cool." It fills me with such love. But I'm at a dichotomy right now. I have this amazing opportunity on stream. Amazing opportunity with you guys. And my home life is getting pounded. And it's hard. The reason I didn't stream yesterday is because I physically couldn't. I was a wreck. an absolute wreck. I couldn't do anything. I literally told my kids, I said to them, guys, I can't do the parent thing today. I just can't. So can you guys help me out? And they were super kind and super awesome. And, they made spaghetti and left me alone. And then just sat with me for a bit. But I wanted to share with you guys a little bit. I was encouraged today by a couple pastors that I was meeting with to say, what if you just tell people, you let it out, because I haven't been telling you guys everything. I tell a bit of the Stream Dream Team, sort of the stuff that goes on, but you guys don't know that behind the scenes I'm at the ER constantly. That I'm, that some of the most painful stuff in my life is still going on, that I'm constantly pulled between two worlds, and that every time I go on stream and every time we have a victory, every time you see an amazing thing happen through Taco or through the Discord or through stream, that there's almost a payment for it in my house, that's equal and opposite reaction to it. And it's hard. It's really hard. And I know I'm not alone. I know lots of ministers have been through this kind of stuff. I remember I had a mentor at one point say to me, and this was earlier in my pastor, he goes, "You've had 25 years of ministry in the last 5." And I feel like in the same way, I've done 100 years of ministry in 15. It's been a lot. And so I just want to tell you guys a few things. One, could you please pray for me, pray for my family, pray for my friends, the ones who keep getting hurt. I've said to the Stream Dream Team, you sign up for this thing, you're going to get hurt too. Anybody who's in my wake and anybody who's serving with me gets pounded on. So serving and helping me do what I'm doing, you end up in the wake of suffering. And I've warned them, and it happens. I am, could you pray for me? Could you help me when it comes to working with the ministry? I'm working as hard as I can. You guys know I do. I try to do 12-hour days, 6 days a week, trying to as hard as I can. But can you be patient with me as I try to launch this taco thing, as I try to work through the network, as I try to teach the classes, I try to do these streams? There are going to be times where I can't make it happen anymore because it just too much hurt. So can you be patient with me? Third, can you help me with provision? I don't know what's going to happen over the next few months. I know that God is doing amazing things through the ministry, through the stream, through the Discord, through the network, through all these things, and it's amazing. But there's such uncertainty. Keep pointing out the door. This room, this cocoon that I'm in right now, is a wonderful place to be, but everything out that door is difficult and scary sometimes. And so can you help me with provision, just telling people that I exist and telling creators I exist, and if you feel so compelled, help me to be able to pay my bills, because I don't know how that's going to happen and how it's going to keep happening. It's hard, but at the same time, there's nowhere I'd rather be. There's nowhere I'd rather be than right here, right now with you guys. Yo, Polygon, my dude, thank you so much. Bro, thank you. That's extraordinary. Polygon has been very kind. Very, very kind to me in this channel. He's an awesome guy and a super amazing supporter. Offline, during the stream, super awesome. So everybody who just got a gift sub, please say thank you to Polygon, because he's a wonderful guy and a good pastor and a good dude. So thank you. So if you could help me in those arenas, prayer, patience, provision. Because I'm a pastor, I get to do 3 things, and they have to all start with the same letters, okay? That's just that's the rule. But can you help me with that? I would love it. So Lidegate's in the chat. Lidegate's going to go through some tough stuff too. So I know you all are too. I hear from you. I get it. You have deaths in the family, and you have debt, and you have sickness, and you have frustrations, and you have job uncertainty, and you have school uncertainty and vision, issues. I know you guys are going through stuff too. That's why I'm so glad that we're doing this together. because this is a unique environment and it's a wonderful place to be. And I'm so glad you're part of my life. Hey everyone, I just want to make a quick thank you to everyone who's been supporting me through Patreon, coffee, sending directly, serving on the Stream Dream Team, being part of the channel, subs, bits, all that. Thank you so much for being part of the channel, and I really hope that you know how much I care about you guys and how much I appreciate you.